day, viewers of Embassy Direct. We are here today at the High Commission of New Zealand with our good friend, Ambassador Richard Mann. Hello, Ambassador.
Hi, how are you? It's a pleasure.
Pleasure. Your Excellency, how would you define your diplomatic tour in Africa? Is there any moment or event that highlights?
Well, I'm covering 13 countries in Africa, based from here in Pretoria. I go as far north as Kenya in the east, Tanzania, Angola, Mozambique, Lesotho, Swaziland, across to Mauritius and the Indian Ocean. So it's a very diverse role that I have, a lot of different countries, different people that I deal with. But I would say that in South Africa, the moment which stands out for me was the memorial service for Nelson Mandela, the former president. And the reason it stands out is twofold. One is because Mandela was a global icon, a figure who the world could empathise with in terms of reconciliation and perseverance to struggle to the democracy in the nation, the Rainbow Nation of South Africa. I'd say the second reason why that stands out in my mind is that we had a very high level delegation from New Zealand come to that service. We had our Prime Minister, leader of our opposition, our Minister of Maori Affairs, and several other former leaders of New Zealand. So it was at very short notice pulling together and organising a high-level visit of that nature was a challenge, but one that we met. And to be there in the big Soweto Stadium, to listen to the music, to see the passion of South Africans as they mourned the passing of this great man. I think that is the moment over my 3 years that really stands out.
Thanks. As a family man, have you enjoyed the experience of your job in this country?
It's there are aspects of South Africa which are not dissimilar to living in New Zealand. I think in both countries we love the outdoors. We have a fairly informal style of living. The food here is great. The climate is probably the best climate I've lived in. I come from the capital city of New Zealand called windy Wellington, where it blows. So we've thoroughly enjoyed our time here, and my wife, who is here with me, has created a very interesting life for herself. She has been involved in the Diplomatic Spouses Group. She has done quite a lot of charity work, and in particular she and a group of other ambassadors' wives have made regular visits to Lesotho to run art classes in a place called Marija, because over in Lesotho art is not part normally of the school curriculum, and so these children are absolutely fascinated and excited at the opportunity to do some creative artistic work. So she has done it very fulfilling.
And precisely that part of the tour, when the family gets involved and gets in touch with the community, I think that's one of the most rewarding moments of the career.
Yeah, I think so, because when you're an ambassador, you can be a little bit confined. I mean, being an ambassador is a public role, and you're expected to do certain things. But I think through your family, you can broaden out your contact. If you have children, through schools, etc. And I think it adds to my understanding of South Africa and its culture, what my wife does as well.
How would you describe the relationship between your country and South Africa?
First, I'd say it's very good. It's probably the deepest bilateral relationship that we have in Africa, because it goes back through history, both through good times and bad times. The reality is that the first New Zealand soldiers to fight overseas fought in the South African Wars. Through the apartheid era, there was a very strong anti-apartheid movement in my country. The protests there were certainly in 1981 were I would say the biggest protests I've seen in my lifetime in New Zealand. So we were quite staunch about the need for South Africa to move to freedom and democracy. And since that came in 1994, we have developed our relations in many fields. We have a lot of people-to-people links. There are about 50 or 60,000 South Africans who live in New Zealand. It is about 1.5% of our population. We have obviously a lot of sporting links, and we are going forward on trade and investment as well. So it's a good relationship.
Great. Ambassador, is there any physical presence of South African corporate business in New Zealand and vice versa?
Yes, we in fact we are seeing at this moment some South African investment in New Zealand. Woolworths has made some big investments there, particularly in the retail and property area. And there are some other South African companies of a smaller scale who are operating there. On this side of the ocean, we have a number of New Zealand companies in areas like manufacturing, food products, who are invested here, who are operating here. So it's growing. We are a long way away from each other geographically, but I think there is growing interest. We are now getting into science and technology collaboration, so that's quite an exciting new field where we collaborate in various areas.
What would you say that attract New Zealand companies to come to South Africa to invest?
I think New Zealand companies or New Zealanders who run companies, firstly they kind of have they know South Africa generally through the people-to-people links. Secondly, I think that they see this as a country which has the rule of law and is reasonably open for foreign investment and business. Thirdly, South Africa itself is quite a large market. I mean, New Zealand is very much an export-oriented economy because we only have 4.5 million people ourselves. If you take food, for example, we export something like 90% of the agricultural products that we produce. So, in effect, we feed the world. I think that South Africa offers a very good market. And then the last thing I would say is that New Zealand companies often look to South Africa as the platform for leveraging and expanding into other markets in Africa.
Excellency, now I'm going to touch a sensitive topic.
Okay.
Rugby.
Yeah.
1995
Well, it's not sensitive because we're the world champions at the moment.
1995 played an important role in the political history and sporting activity of South Africa.
Yes.
When the Springboks won the final of the Rugby World Cup on home ground.
Yeah.
As the current holders of the Rugby World Cup title, how would you say sporting events, or any cultural event for that matter, aid in uniting or bringing together countries?
Well, in a very simple way, there is a great flow of people between our two countries, simply through all the sporting teams that are virtually every week coming backwards and forwards. Sport, let me start with rugby. New Zealand and South Africa, I would say, have the same passion for the sport. And we have both been world champions. I can remember in 1995 when I was on assignment in Thailand and sitting in a hotel room watching the final of that Rugby World Cup, which South Africa won against a tremendous New Zealand side, one of the great All Black sides. But I think it was like destiny that South Africa would win that World Cup. And obviously it was a moment, a transcendental moment in terms of of forging the new Rainbow Nation in this country. So we share the same passion. I've talked to a lot of the top South African players, the Springboks, and they say they love touring New Zealand. They like meeting up with the New Zealand mates, going out to their farms or spending some time together. And I know that the New Zealand players enjoy touring South Africa. So there is a level of respect between our two sides at the highest level, the All Blacks and the Springboks, a level of respect for each other and the skill and the strength that we bring to the game. It is amazing how many different sports we compete in together and interact with. So, I mean, just in the past year, I can think of polo, I can think of runners and the sort of Ironman competitions, field hockey, netball. New Zealand was here, our soccer team was here when South Africa hosted the FIFA World Cup. Cricket, of course, where New Zealand has, fortunately for me, beaten South Africa in two semi-finals in recent World Cups. That famous one in New Zealand, the one-day game where it was actually the batsman who hit the winning runs was a boy born in Johannesburg. So, and the rugby team that I follow, the Hurricanes, in the Super Rugby competition, two of the leading players in that are South African born, one of the props and one of the wingers. So, it's a wonderful interaction that we have in sport.
You're very passionate, boys.
Yeah, well, you know, when you go to Ellis Park, and I've been there each year when the All Blacks have played the Springboks since I've been here. I think we've won 3 and lost 1. Or if you go to Loftus Stadium here in Pretoria, you can feel the passion of the South African fans.
Tolkien wrote Lord of the Rings, but its movie version was filmed in New Zealand.
Yeah.
New Zealand is considered one of the most important film producers of the world. South Africa has its share in the industry too. Do you foresee any further collaboration between the two countries in any of these cultural or sporting related fields beyond which exist already? And in what ways?
We signed a film co-production agreement about 3 or 4 years ago, and that was an expression of the desire of the two governments to facilitate film making and collaborations between our two countries. You're right, there's even a road in Bloemfontein. We have had co-productions like District 9, which have been very successful. I'm aware of at least one film co-production which is being made at the moment. And I think there is a great deal more we can do in that field. New Zealand has made a name for itself internationally for filmmaking, I think for 3 reasons. Firstly, we have incredible locations. So we have great and very diverse landscapes and cities which are ideal for making movies. Secondly, we have bred some great filmmakers. So Peter Jackson is probably the most famous, but you think of directors like Jane Campion, and in Hollywood there is a whole host of New Zealand directors and actors. And I think thirdly, and the Lord of the Rings and Hobbit movies showed this, we have fantastic post-production technologies and studios. So the visual effects that we all saw in the Lord of the Rings, I think, kind of stunned the world. That this was like a new sophistication, a new reality in terms of film visual effects. So we have, I think, much to offer in that field. I've watched a number of South African films, movies. I think there's strong stories here that come through the movies. Some fantastic actors and acting, and so I think there is a natural fit between our two countries in filmmaking.
Well, we hope to see more co-production between the two countries in the future for the viewers. And thank you very much for your words today, your time, Mr. Ambassador. Thank you for Ambassador Rick.
I'll enjoy it.
Okay, bye.